Hello, and in this lesson, we are going to focus on IP addressing, specifically IP addressing definitions, conceptual overview of IP addressing, and public versus private IP addresses, which will be the main focus of this lesson. So what is IP addressing? Well, for a simplified definition, is providing an EC2 instance with a public IP address. Now, if you are somewhat unfamiliar with exactly what an IP address is, let's take a look at a simplified definition of that. And that is an IP address is the instance's address on the network. So a quick example of this is think of network traffic as a piece of postal mail. Then think of an IP address as your home street address. Someone trying to deliver mail to your house will need your street address to find your location and deliver the mail. Without a street address, in this case being the IP address, the postal worker would never be able to find your home and deliver the mail. So whenever you think about an IP address, just think about it kind of as your home address. It is the way that people can find you, or in this case, find your instance. So now let's get into public and private IP addressing. By default, all EC2 instances have a private IP address. Private IP addresses allow for instances to communicate with each other as long as they are located in the same VPC or broader private network. So IP addresses are used for internal communication within the VPC. For public IP addresses, EC2 instances can be launched with or without a public IP address by default, depending on the VPC subnet settings. So depending on your VPC subnet settings, EC2 instances can be launched with or without an IP address by default. Public IP addresses are required for the instance to communicate with the internet. So that is very important. So if you want your instance to be able to communicate outside of your VPC, it must have a public IP address. So as another side note, the default VPC and subnets are configured so that any new instance that is provisioned has a public IP address. So that is the default for EC2 instances out of the box, as long as you're using the default VPC. So to recap on this, let's take a look at everything an EC2 instance needs to communicate with the internet. So here we have our EC2 instance, and down here we have the internet. This is everything that it needs and that it goes through in order to communicate with the internet or have data flow in and out to the internet. So you have the EC2 instance, you need a public IP address. Then security groups on the instance have to have rules that allow the traffic in and out. Then at the network access control list level, again, you need rules that allow traffic in and out. The instance needs to be associated with a route table. That route table needs to be associated with an internet gateway. Then the data or information can reach the internet or vice versa coming in. But if any one of these items, these components, or these steps isn't configured properly, then information will not be able to flow between the internet and your EC2 instance. So these are all the points of failure, or I should more say the points that you have to look at if you're troubleshooting restriction errors. So it may be that you're trying to access the internet, but you don't have a public IP address, or maybe your inbound or outbound rules on security groups or network access control lists are not set up to allow that specific type of traffic, or maybe the EC2 instance is not associated with a route table, or maybe the route table doesn't have an internet gateway attached. These are all areas that you need to look at or think about when you are analyzing your VPC and your internal network in terms of data flow and communication. So again, quickly, IP addressing is providing an EC2 instance with a public IP address. And always think of an IP address as your EC2 instance's address, or its street address. It is how it is identified, and it is how information is delivered to it on the network. And with that, we will conclude this lesson. Thank you for watching. You may now move on.